Today we're excited to have Michael on the Human Performance series, who's going to tell us more about himself. Michael.
Thanks, Ben. I'm a 31-year-old accountant. I work in corporate finance for one of the big accountancy firms. So helping our clients buy or sell companies, essentially. Quite recently trying to move away from helping them think about the financial performance of their businesses, but more around their non-financial, so sustainability and ESG due diligence is a service line that I'm starting in our company.
It sounds like quite a high-pressured job. Outside of work, are there any sort of hobbies or activities that you enjoy, or stuff that takes up your time outside of work?
Yeah, it can be quite an intense job with tight deadlines set by our clients. So outside of work, I do a lot of exercise. Growing up, used to be a lot of team sports, but now working in London, it's a lot more single or maybe doubles games. The recent paddle craze is one I'm particularly enjoying, but also play a bit of golf in the summer. I do triathlons, so swimming, running, cycling.
Is there a moment where you've faced a challenge which really pushed your limits?
Probably a quadrathlon that I did a couple of years ago with a friend. It was a pairs event, which I really enjoyed, but quadrathlon is a triathlon, but with kayaking as the fourth. The thing that got us both, I guess, to the finish line was just having each other there. So, you go at the pace of the slower of the two, whether it was the running part, which I was probably a bit better at, or the kayaking part where he was definitely the engine. I would say it's just that camaraderie and just wanting to finish the event without any real expectations on time or anything like that.
And with such an extreme event, are there moments within it where you really are enjoying it, or you can kind of stop to have a bit of a laugh? Obviously it's quite grueling and tough.
Well, it was a long day, early start, early swim, and it took us just less than 12 hours. So we knew it would be a sort of whole day event. I'm not going for a particular time. We definitely took the moments to enjoy the views. We climbed 7 Monroes or mountains as part of this quadrathlon. So there were definitely moments to take in the scenery, and the weather was kind at moments, but there were a few patches where the clouds came in and it was sort of face to the floor, let's get through this moments.
And with doing a quadrathlon, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a normal thing to do. Looking back, is there a moment or a pivotal time period in your life where you realized that these were kind of events that you would like to do in the future, or you found enjoyment in testing your boundaries?
I think I've always enjoyed physical activity and sports in particular. I have only become sort of obsessed, my friends would say, at least, with triathlons in the last couple of years. So I've done a couple of Ironman events. And I think for me, I really enjoy having a sole goal outside of my work to focus on and put my energy into, knowing that you will reap some reward or at least enjoy the day. Like the quadrathlon, it was about trying to enjoy the event. So I wouldn't say there's a particular moment for me personally, but definitely it was a natural progression with a busy 9-to-5 job during the week to find something else to focus my energy on.
On a daily basis, or day in, day out, is there an impactful habit that you've developed that will help your performance?
Yeah, for me, I think everyone that knows me well would agree that I prioritize my sleep above anything else, getting to bed on time or early, but I also do it in the morning. I'm usually out the door within 15 minutes of my alarm going off, so I do as much as I can before I go to bed the night before. So I shower, think about what I need to wear, if anything, or what I need to take with me for my day, pack it all, get it ready. So when my alarm goes off, all I'm doing, I'm just brushing my teeth, getting changed, and I'm out the door. I think for me, it's maximizing my sleep, but it's also just getting me started as soon as possible.
And if I came to you and said, Michael, I'd love a tip on how I can perform better daily, either mentally or physically, is there something that comes to mind?
I think sleep is absolutely paramount for me. There's lots of science to back, you need at least 7 hours of sleep a day, quality sleep a day, to function at your best. So for me, what I did when I was doing some of these training programs is I made sure that I had at least 5 usually 10, 15 minutes in my bedroom, sort of settling down before I tried to get to sleep, rather than, showering, rushing straight to head to pillow, just to try and decompress, try and slow my mind down. Reading, I would find, send me to sleep within 1 or 2 pages. I still didn't really finish a book when I was doing my training program, despite my best efforts, because it would just help me wind down. I found that it made me sleep much better. The quality of sleep was much better. So I felt much more energetic the following day.
And do you have a recovery process? You work long hours, you have a lot of time spent doing your activities outside. Sleep is obviously a big one, but is there something else that relaxes you, helps recenter you?
Gentle exercise does actually relax me. So walking, if I, particularly, the cold, dark evenings at the moment, just going for a nice walk, maybe with a friend, but maybe on my own, does help me to relax. Diet is also very important to that, and balancing your nutrition. But yeah, I think friends is a classic one, but also quite happy just going for a walk on my own. It helps me calm down and unwind. And
you mentioned you were based in Peckham.
Yes.
I would say arguably some of the best food comes from Peckham. Is there a spot in Peckham that is a go-to, long training days?
Yeah, to be honest, there are several really quick and convenient shops, which is more my kind of vibe. En route, I'll give a shout out to. They are really good vegetarian wraps and Middle Eastern type cuisine, but I go for their wraps every day. It's quite easy to grab and go on the way to and from places. I mean, if you're going for somewhere fancy, Mr. Bao is also a great hit, always very, very busy. Yeah, you're right. There's lots of places, but I'm more of a convenience person. So somewhere like En route is a good one.
Speaking about convenience and nutrition, you're obviously a Huel drinker. How did you first hear about Huel?
So I have been taking Huel now for probably a couple of years, ever since I started doing these endurance events. It was a friend that got me into them. He actually used them for meal replacements, but I started taking them as a really quick and easy way of getting an extra 400-500 calories into my diet when I was doing my training, particularly for the full Ironman. I struggled to eat enough quality food, so having a Huel shake takes seconds to prepare. It's an easy way of just inhaling 500 calories. But I also really liked how quick and easy it was to digest. So if I did a training session after work, I wouldn't really compromise going to bed later for what you might think of as a more traditional meal. So very easy just to have a Huel shake at 8:30, 9 p.m. and still be in bed or ready for bed at 10, no problems, without any digestion. So found it really easy just to assimilate into my lifestyle and get enough food in during my week.
Do you have any idea how much you were burning during these periods?
I would love to know, and I did email a lot of universities to say, do you want to use me as a guinea pig and study me while I do this program? But obviously every day was slightly different, but I would be trying to eat between 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day, which might sound really joyous to a lot of people, but it was actually for me one of the hardest things because you're eating when you're not hungry. So I would guess between 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day you're probably burning.
And is there a particular Huel product that has been a go-to during these events?
Yeah, so I still order the white pouches, vanilla and chocolate usually, depending on what time of day it is I'm having it. But just shake it up yourself, because I think you can add as many scoops as you want, and I just usually add water for, again, simplicity, and get it in me as quickly as possible.
Actually, it's our higher carb product.
Right.
So
perfect.
It would make it makes a lot of sense for those events. Working full time and doing these events, spare time probably doesn't come along too often. Are there moments where you feel yourself feeling fatigued or tired, and how do you combat those moments?
In short, you definitely had physical and mental fatigue. Quite easy to catch yourself feeling so tired. I get quite impatient when I'm tired. I usually try and take myself away from any environment that is causing impatience or angst. But it was during the day, the 3-4 o'clock slump at work, I found the hardest. And actually part of the reason I chose this year to do an Ironman was because I had flexibility with my work. So I would use that time to do a part of my training program, usually a swim or something that would really wake me up. And I would find that usually gives me a bit more energy for later in the day. So I'm not sure if that really answers your question, but I'd say a combination of taking myself away and doing more.
I completely understand like where you're going. Like I think activity doesn't need to necessarily be too intense.
Yeah.
But I think you can easily give in to the fatigue and tiredness. And as you will well know, doing all these events, like mental fortitude is a lot of the battle. Definitely mentally. That's why I love the pair event, the quadrathlon, because you could tell your friend how much of a good or bad time you were having. The solo events, they have much more of that mental requirement to them, I think. And what would you say inspires you?
Yeah, it's hard not to sound corny with that sort of question. I would say I'm quite an emotive person, so show me any YouTube montage and I'll be inspired. I think if you get to know anyone's story, there's probably an element of inspiration you can take from them. So obvious ones in business like Richard Branson, creating something from nothing, Dyson, loads of really interesting stories. But to be honest, with the business ones, I always find they've really sacrificed everything to just give it a go. And you obviously only hear of the ones that are successful. So I wouldn't necessarily say I'm inspired by those people. What they've achieved is phenomenal, but I know that I would never be willing to give up everything that they gave up to risk it being so successful. So that was a long-winded way of saying I don't think I naturally have anyone that I would aspire or does necessarily inspire me, but throw me a montage and I will definitely get pumped up for something.
I can just picture David Goggins screaming in my ear. I think that's been a feature of 2024 is, all these inspirational people.
They don't tell you the other side. And for me, I know myself well enough to know that, 5 or 6 months sacrifice for the Ironman was probably the limit of what I'd be willing to give up with my friends, my family, other things outside of just purely exercise.
Is it at times hard to find that balance?
Yeah, of course. And I think the training for my Ironman was the first time I really felt selfish in dictating what I spent my free time on and unapologetically saying no to, close friends, other, colleagues, work events, whatever. I'm obviously made it pretty well known that I was training for an Ironman. So I was, very selfish in saying I'm not going to come to this or I need to do a 3-hour-long bike ride or whatever. And I really enjoyed that autonomy and that deliberate focus in my free time. The balance was over a longer stretch of time. That 6 months, it wasn't very balanced, but I knew that it would balance out, over a longer period of time. So yes, balance is difficult, but I think if you know where your balance is going to come from, and I guess articulating that to the people that matter most to you, hopefully they're supportive of your decision.
Is there any advice you'd give to your younger self?
Depending on how aware I was at whatever age we're talking, I think, just try and focus on why it is you're doing what you're doing. You're not just doing it for someone else. What are you trying to get out of it? If it's simply to impress that girl over there, fine, but just know that's why you're doing it. I guess just be a bit more, deliberate with what you're doing.
And it feels like transparency with yourself.
Yeah, and it's not always easy to know what your motivations really are. I think that is something that probably that experience does help. You learn a bit more about yourself and what it is you're trying to achieve, whether it's with something sporting or not. When I was younger, even my early 20s, didn't really know why I was doing what I was doing, going through the institutions, qualifying as an accountant. I felt like these choices were all sort of made for me, and it wasn't until my sort of mid-20s that I started, being a bit more deliberate and I guess making my own decisions with career and outside of work.
For someone who's quite busy, reflection's an important practice. What does it mean for you?
I think that reflection point is, it's a really good one to dwell on. And it's not something that naturally came to me younger, in my early 20s. It's a classic in work, appraisals or reviewing, looking back. Your priorities definitely shift, but I think looking back helps you to identify what maybe is consistent with the decisions you made or how you approach the situation, the sort of values that you live by authentically, and whether you want to try and change those values. And that's something that I've tried to adopt as I've gotten older. So I think it's really important if that was your question.
I completely agree. It's definitely a practice that I think people should try and introduce to their lifestyle at least weekly.
Definitely. And I try to practice the daily journaling, thinking of like 3 things that went well in your day. I tried to do that before I went to bed, and maybe lasted a few months. But I liked the concept of, even the small things like appreciating slightly bluer sky, or it not raining when it was forecast to rain, or, just a nice conversation with a stranger, that sort of thing. I guess try and make each day a little bit special or unique. Yeah, I did really enjoy that one while I did it, and it did help me process the day before I went to bed.
It's a good way to kind of make a habitual thing. You probably subconsciously now have that ingrained in your head to take thanks or be grateful, especially for stuff like training blocks, where it can be quite grueling, but it's important to not forget the sessions or the process. Because you mentioned earlier about the Ironman. If you'd like to say again about how you found it, from like obviously training block all the way to the actual event.
Yeah, it was as I say, quite a selfish period in my year and probably life, focusing on that above anything else, relationships, work, everything. And I did enjoy that element of it, but I learned to, I guess, be a bit kinder to yourself through the process. You download the training plan as you expect your week to go, or your preparation to go, 10 to 12 hours extra a week you're supposed to find from somewhere. It's easy to monitor, and you can quite quickly get into a bit of a spiral of missing a session or shortening a session for whatever reason, a little bit of an injury, or you get a bit ill, and it's quite easy to get downbeat on yourself. But by the end of it, I learned that it's better to do, 4 sessions really, really well with good intention, high energy, really focused, than to do 5 sessions quite well. And I think that's something I've tried to do outside of physical activity as well. At work, everyone's got massive long to-do lists, but doing half a dozen things to your best of your ability and really, really well, I think is more valuable than spreading yourself really thin and trying to achieve all of it, but to a very average standard.
So if you could recommend one book, tool or resource, what would it be and why?
First thing comes to my mind is my housemate. Everyone needs a best friend that has an answer to everything. But if you don't have your own Tom, a podcast that I do listen to quite a lot is Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, Live Well, Do Better. I think the fact that he's a doctor, for me, gives him a lot of credibility in what he says. And he gets some really interesting guests talking about mental and physical well-being. A much more holistic approach to health, which I would definitely recommend people.